Okay. So let me introduce Professor Theodorou first. So he's an associate professor with the School of Aerospace Engineering at Georgia Institute of Technology. And he's a director of the Autonomous Control and Decision System Laboratory. He's an affiliate with the Institute of Robotics and Intelligent Machines and the Center for Machine Learning Research at Georgia Tech. And he is also an Amazon scholar, and his academic and industry research interests span the area of control systems, optimization, autonomy, robotics, large-scale system, and supply chain logistics. So,
thank you. Thank you for the invitation. This is a great workshop. It takes place at the USC. I graduated in USC. In fact, I think I took classes here. So that takes me about memories. And then, I mean, I cannot really resist in workshops that talk about parallelization optimization. It's really at the core of the work that I have been doing for quite some time now. So, I think at this point, everybody knows about MPPI and people are using it. The sample-based stochastic optimization method. When we start working in this space, it took us a while to really kind of get a grasp of GPUs and how we can use MPPI. And a lot of this work goes back to my very first student, Grady Williams, who worked on, I remember doing the first version of MPPI for CPUs. And so there has been a lot of work in this space. We started with very small vehicles in the very beginning. And we were also part of the DARPA racer competition. A lot of work that we did on full-scale vehicles. Many lessons that we have learned. But when I look into the literature, I just want to see like what are the different forms of MPPI, right? And I just have in blue things that came out of my lab. I think every scientist is happy when like you do things that some of the things you publish, but you want really the community to build on the stuff that you have done. So I'm really happy to see all the work that people are doing on this space. They truly believe in parallelization and stochastic control, stochastic optimization. Very excited about also the work that people do in incorporating model predictive control in reinforcement learning. That has been also my dream in terms of how you can combine different scales of optimization within one paradigm. So I'm really excited to see the work on temporal difference MPC. And so when it comes down to all of this work, I think there are different classes of extensions that people work on. There's one area where people augment the dynamics, state-space dynamics, they augment the cost functions, a lot of work around incorporating safety, CWAR, change constraints within MPPI. There's another stream of work on two-layer architectures where people are moving more in the areas of CBS, how to incorporate CBS for safety in MPPI. Like I said, they work on reinforcement learning and different types of generalization. People like to generalize stuff. So different forms of sampling. So that's all great and I'm truly excited. But today, what I would like to do is I would like to a little bit wrestle with the question of can we go beyond this paradigm of sampling-based optimization, parallelization, what algorithms like it. I think there's not the only algorithm, there's cross-channel methods, there are other sampling-based techniques that used for model predictive control. And basically, I mean, sampling is great. The promise of sampling is to deal with non-convexity, but in many cases, sampling can also get stuck to local minima, or it may be very slow in really giving you a good solution. It can be also very inefficient when you are dealing with very highly nonlinear dynamical systems, how you sample. Important sampling can help you, but that's not the only way. And so another thing I want to say is that a lot of this motivation comes not only from what I'm going to say today, comes from motivation. It's not only from the space of autonomous vehicle. As scientists, we work on different problems, and some of this motivation comes from the work of Schwab robotics and multi-unit systems in general. As the scale of these problems increases, the levels of complexity also increase, and your ability to find good, fast solutions is very important. And I want to draw inspiration about the ideas of how to move forward from other areas, from the area of cognitive science and management sciences. I want to share with you one book that I was reading not very recently, about a year ago. It's written by Tim Hartford, and it really talks about how messy situations, how things that can be disruptive in the process of you trying to solve a problem, either you as a person or as an artist or as an organization, can actually lead to very, very, very innovative solutions, right? And so I want to just, because I also, I like to play music, and I find many parallels between music and science. I just want to give you an example. That's actually the introductory example of the book of how disruption, unexpected things can actually lead to amazing stuff. It's the famous concert by Keith Jarrett. I don't know if you know, he was a very famous jazz player, and he was invited in 1975 to give a concert. And when he ended up trying to the piano that he was about to play the music, apparently he found out that the piano was out of tune, basically not working properly. The pedals were not operational, and so there was a back and forth in terms of, okay, should I do the concert or not? And so the long story short, he decided to go down that to play, and all the music that he played was pure improvisation, right? There was nothing written before on a broken piano, right? That's just going to share with you the very beginning of that. Quite amazing music. Okay, so this is quite amazing, right? And so I agree with this idea that if you want to be creative, you have to disrupt the process of optimization, right? Like small incremental steps will not take you to a very, very good solution. And creativity here, okay, I mean, we can argue what creativity is, but from my point of view as an optimization person is really getting a very, very good local mean. Okay. And so there are other things that, other core ideas there that don't get very comfortable once in a while. Is important to disrupt your comfort zone. But now I want to think about optimization and how can I bring these ideas of disruption in the optimization process, right? And my world has been split. Like some of my students think that my favorite algorithm is differential dynamic programming. Other students think that my favorite algorithm is really MPPI. But really the idea here is basically, just follow some gradient steps for a while. And then once in a while, try to disrupt this process with something, right? And the goal here is to be able to explore the state space and just find good optimal solutions, right? And so just follow some steps, and once in a while, try to sample around the state you are. If you find a better solution, move to that better solution, and then follow that process. Okay, and now the sampling comes in a way that you can choose. You can essentially go with a Gaussian random variable, right? Like you can put a Gaussian distribution on the solution of the optimizer and then sample based on that. Or you can actually work with more general classes of exponential distributions, like the Q exponential, and then being able to get distributions that have more data. So essentially how you can do that, I mean, that's not new, like everybody's using with entropy regularization. There's a lot of work in reinforcement learning, right? There's a lot of work in optimal control. People talk about exploratory Hamilton's entropy Dalton equations. So you can essentially entropy regularize the optimal control problem. One very interesting thing here is that if you use the Shannon entropy, right, then the compositionality of optimal control is actually preserved, which actually has direct implications in terms of whether or not you can have multimodal policy. But if you go to a non-extensive entropy, if I use, for example, the list entropy, so why these entropies are called non-extensive? Because these entropies are not added, right? The entropy of the summation of two systems is not equal to the summation of their own entropy. So what that really means is that you cannot really have compositionality. It's really hard to get multimodal policies, but the fact that you're working with a Q exponential function allows you to sample from, to have heavier tails and really sample from parts of the state space that you will not be able to sample if you were using a unimodal Gaussian policy. And another thing with this Q exponentials is that there are ways that they have a tendency to couple the performance with the sharpness of the distribution function that you that you're using for sampling. For example, here in the second figure, if you can see that if your value function is small, then the sampling distribution will become steep, but if the value function becomes large, then you're going to end up with a flat distribution. And that's a property that you can get once you regularize the optimal control problem, the planning problem, a decision-making problem with a non-extensive entropy. And so another disruptive mechanism is to just go and use the Newton Stein variational update rule, but we apply that. We apply that once every few iterations, like not like at every iteration. And so I just want to show you some results in simulation. Yeah, the first is just like MPPIs, and they I think the top right is the unimodal MPPI, and you can essentially see that okay, you can get stuck. And these are things that we have seen in the real world on different projects that we have worked on. But the last row is basically the row where you have the maximum entropy differential with dynamic programming, multimodal maximum entropy differential dynamic programming, and then we have this time variation. So it's all about essentially mixing gradient descent with sampling-based methods. That's what I'm trying to say. There's a lot of interesting opportunities there to develop new paradigms for very fast optimization for non-convex problems. Okay, here, I mean, we have some metrics. This is all to say that you can essentially have higher success rate, and you can have smaller violation of constraints on average. There's a bit of the question is whether or not we can squeeze these methodologies in real-time applications, and the question would be what is really real time, right? But I think there's a lot of work to be done here with GPUs, because you have a scheme that has gradient based and something. So there's really interesting stuff that one can do. And then some other like more creepy examples, again, like I'm just going to show you some simulations at this point in different environments. We have a journal paper that we will archive soon with all of his work on different systems. The idea basically is that through this disruptive process, you are going to be able to avoid the you can explore the environment much better and find your way to the final solution to your target. Okay, so I want to wrap up this part of my presentation and say that sampling only optimization may not be enough to handle very complex tasks. For planning scenarios for single or multi-agent systems, I do think that combining gradient and sampling-based optimization seems to be beneficial, and we have a lot of experimental evidence at this point that these methodologies actually can work very well. Now, we have still there's the issue of non-smoothness, which makes like techniques like MPPI to be really great. But at the end of the day, when you go down to a real system, I will argue that it's really, really hard to see where the non-smoothness really exists, right? So these methodologies have a lot of room to they can still be very, very applicable. Now, we don't really understand this mechanism very well from a theoretical perspective. We have intuitions about that. And actually, we work on the theoretical analysis, how often you disrupt, what's the underlying distribution, how do you couple the value function with the sampling-based process. These are all very open questions for people who work in theoretical optimization. And then how well these methods will integrate with reception is really an open question. Sometimes I argue with my students who work on the data research project, and they always come back and say that this will never work on a situation where you have a very when you have a cost map and you have sensors giving you a lot of data because you have to differentiate. But I'm always pushing back and say, okay, that's the first really very complex MPPI. So that you don't want to do extra work. And then my last 2 points is that it is considered that the secret sauce, like how to combine modules, may be more important than like the individual component, right? And that is true. Like that's something that we have also experienced, right? But sometimes you have to be willing to accept the fact that individual algorithms that are sitting in really central parts of your autonomy stack can be very disruptive, and that should make you think about the overall planning and perception of architecture. So I don't know how much extra time I have.
It's only 5 minutes.
5 minutes. Okay. So yeah, as I said on my abstract, I really want to talk about this optimization and planning and parallelization. But there's also one thing that I just want to sneak in my presentation, which really excites me a lot, and it really has to do with a lot of the discussions that I hear and about artificial intelligence and its use in autonomous systems, in autonomous vehicles. And there is this, I mean, there's a wave, right, that we have this very general black box neural network representations that we can use them to solve very hard problems in autonomous vehicles. And I just want to share with you my view and my perspective and just share some of the results that we have done, which is that I don't really believe that if you come down to very safety critical systems, I don't really think that the generalist approach is the way to go. And so this is a very nice graph that it's from a paper on model-based deep learning that they kind of show what are the trade-offs in terms of how much data you use for a deep neural network architecture that represents, let's say, an optimizer, and how much domain expertise, the domain knowledge you should incorporate in it. So essentially, on the one extreme, we have the model-free approaches. No prior knowledge is embedded into the deep neural network architecture. And on the other side, we have actually architectures that arise from the dynamics of the processes that we try to imitate. So I find this research to be very exciting. It's not easy research because to derive the structure of the neural network architecture that mimics an optimizer, you need to really understand optimization, right? So it's not going to be a plug and play thing. And so, but I do think that this will solve many, many interesting problems, especially in the safety critical space, right? And I'm not sure if all robotics overlaps entirely with the safety critical domain, but there are aspects of robotics that do really interact. And the idea is actually simple, and it has been around, and people have used it a lot in other spaces in image and signal processing. Is basically deep unfolding, right? Taking an optimizer, unfolding it, and then learning parameters of this optimizer. And not only that, actually, you can, if you think as that the dynamics of the optimizer as a dynamical system, then you can start training these neural network architectures in a feedback way. Like you can make these parameters to depend on the properties of the optimizer from the previous iterations. And so, so what this promises really, from my point of view, is that you can have a representation that is interpretable. It can be scalable and fast. It will definitely have much better performance. You can incorporate the constraints of the optimizer in the architecture. So by design, the architecture will, if the initial optimization problem is feasible, by design, the architecture will actually satisfy the constraints of the optimization problem. You can get generalization guarantees, and it is a way to think about is the analogous of physics-informed neural networks. This is optimization-informed neural networks, okay? And so this is just to show that we had an ICLR paper in which we really try to scale QPs, quadratic programming problems. We took one of the most efficient ways, the OSQP method, extended to the distributed case, and then we solved a bunch of different problems here. And just to show that essentially the unfolded learned architecture finds the solution much faster than the iterative optimization counterpart. So I'm really excited about this, and I think that that's the way to go when it comes down to safety. Thank you.
Right.